Hi, Matt with eTrailer. If you have a 2025 Ram 1500 and you're just looking to get a little bit more security for the bed of your truck, either you're trying to protect your items from any elemental things like rain, snow, or ice, or you just wanted to be a little bit more safe from anyone passing by, then the eTrailer Hard Quad Fold-Up Tonneau cover is going to be a great option for you. So let's check it out. So like I said, this is going to be a hard tonneau cover, and I really do like the look of it back here. Even this kind of textured finish we have kind of makes it a little bit more rugged, and I think it really fits our vehicle today. Now, something to think about too is the extra security you're going to get from this. The reason why that gives you more security is because you're going to have a locking tailgate, so no one can come by and open this up. And even if they really did want to come over here, unlike with a soft tonneau cover, they can't cut into here. So this is going to be a pretty rugged design. But let's kind of take a closer look at how this is going to operate. So if I do go to open it up, we can find two locations. You only have to use one of them to really operate it. You're just going to squeeze these two knobs together right here. Once you squeeze that together, you can just push up on it, and this will lift up. Now, this is going to be a quad style, so it's going to have 4 sections cut out. That makes it a little bit different from a tri-style, which is going to have 3. What's nice about a quad, though, is it takes up less space in your bed. Now, that is something to think about with when you're investing in a tonneau cover. We'll also have these buckles to help secure it down. You're going to have one per side. And what's nice about this one, too, even though it does stick up a little bit above our bed, it's pretty much level with our seats back here, the headrest of our seats back here. So it's still hidden. But to give you a measurement real quick of how high this is going to sit in this position, that's going to be about 4.5 inches, which isn't very high at all. Now, if we looked at how high just one layer would be, that's going to be a little bit under an inch. So when this is fully extended out, that's how much space it's going to take up. Now that's the space above our bed that it takes up. Let's see how much space we have beneath it. So if I measure from the bottom of our bed to the bottom of that tonneau cover, that's going to be around 21 inches. So even if you did have a fifth wheel back here, it wouldn't get in the way of that. Now, if you have any really tall items, like a taller fridge, but you want it pushed all the way back here, this might get in the way some. Well, let's take a look at how much space for those taller items we do have. So, if I measure underneath, the furthest point out that this tonneau cover sticks out, that's going to be about 18 inches is taken from your bed. So like I said, if you have anything taller like a fridge, you will still have space back here. You just might not have as much space. But talk about that bed space too, since we only have a 5.5 foot bed in here, we don't have a whole lot of room to start with. So if you're really trying to maximize the amount of space in your bed, that's okay. We can still take this tonneau cover out. And it's actually a really easy process. You're just going to have 4 knobs that hold this in place. You won't need any tools to remove it. After when you loosen up those knobs, you can take it out and then you have that maximum bed space that you want. And talking about how things are held in place, we can check out these rails. Now these rails are actually pretty simple. They're just going to have 3 clamps that grab onto them. And the only tool that you'll need for this is going to be an included Allen key. So you're going to have an included Allen key for that bolt, and then you're going to have just your hand for this hand knob on the bottom. And what's really nice about this is you don't have to make any modifications or drilling to your bed at all. And what I really like about these rails is a few things. So these are some pretty narrow, some smaller rails. So they're not going to take up much space at all. They actually look very natural on our bed rails. That transition is almost seamless. And this is very low profile. So you don't have to deal with anything that's too bulky. Now if you look at the area right next to your tailgate, you'll see that we have our stake pocket completely open, so you can still use that as well. And I know I've talked a lot about security and bed space, but like I was saying earlier, this is going to be able to keep the elements out from your bed. You'll notice right here, we have this rubber strip that's on the rail itself. This is very seamless, so no water is going to be able to get underneath that. And to make sure no water gets in between your rail and your tonneau cover, we even have this additional coating right here. While this tonneau cover is very water resistant, and I say water resistant because no tonneau cover is truly waterproof or weatherproof, they will give you some butyl tape that does come with this kit. And this is mainly for any types of gaps that you might find in your truck bed. So a lot of times you'll see some gaps in a lot of the corners. You can plug up those gaps with some of this butyl tape to kind of keep any of those larger spots from seeping through. Now there is one drawback to having a quad folding tonneau cover, and that is because everything's compact and in the same location. As you can hear, this thing is pretty heavy. But what kind of lends to that heft is going to be the stability of this. So this is going to have a weight capacity of 200 pounds, but we have plenty of other options on our website for different styles. So a couple other ones would be a roll-up style. Now it's going to take up a little bit less space, but depending on what type, whether it's hard or soft, it is going to be the main factor in that. Now there is another option that actually won't stick up on top of your bed any, and that's going to be a canister style. Now there is a drawback to a canister style. While they do look very nice, they're actually going to take up a space underneath it right here. Now talking about saving bed space, if you are looking for something that's not going to block the space above your bed either, then there are some fold-up options that fold up against the cab of your truck. Now there's a major drawback with that though. While it does save you a lot of bed space, it's going to completely block the back of your window. And that's important because if you're trying to monitor what your gear or whatever you're hauling back here, you won't be able to do that as well. So that's part of the reason why I like this a little bit more. Now in my opinion, I think this is a really solid choice for a tonneau cover, especially if you're just looking for more of the bare bones type of tonneau cover that just is going to give you that extra security and is going to keep out a majority of the elements. But if you are curious to see what the installation of this looks like, just stay tuned and we'll walk you through it. To begin the installation, I like to lay everything out and put everything to the relative sides. You'll notice I already have my right side or your left side installed. It's going to be the same process for both sides of these rails though. But what we're going to have is going to be the rails themselves. We're going to have all the hardware. That's going to include some bolts, some knobs, and some brackets. We'll go over a little bit more in depth later on about what specifically they are. And then we're going to have the tonneau cover itself. I also recommend grabbing a tape measure, just to make this process a bit easier. So we want to put our rails on first, and we want to make sure we have the right one for the correct side and the right orientation. So this one right here is going to be the one for the right side, so that's going to be your passenger side. And you want to make sure it's facing in this way. So you have this bracket facing towards the inside, furthest away, closest to your cab, and this side with the weather stripping against your rails. You're just going to pretty much push it against it until it's flush, and then push it until that bracket makes contact near the bulkhead of your truck. Now we can install the brackets, and the way you want to do this is you want to grab all your parts that you're going to need. So we're going to have the exterior part of your bracket, then we're going to have the interior of your bracket. They're going to kind of connect to each other like this. The way you can also tell they're in the correct orientation is if you have a hole on the bottom where you can thread this hand knob into. I like to just lightly thread that in, just a bit so it can grab on at least. And this is what we're looking for. You're eventually are going to put this bolt through here until it connects to the other side to hold it on your rails. Well, let's see what that process looks like. When you're putting this on, you want to make sure you have this section that has the little cutouts on it. We want to line that up with the track that's on our rail and push it into place. Now we're going to start on the tailgate side. You can start on the bulkhead side. This side is a little bit trickier. That's why I'd recommend starting on the bulkhead side, but it's going to be the same process. And when you put that inside section or bracket in here, you want to make sure there's nothing blocking it or impeding it from grabbing on there. Now this is going to be a pretty tight fit. We're going to make sure nothing's in my way. I think we're pretty good. Now what I like to also do is grab that 5mm Allen key to help hold it in place so we can tighten this down. I think it just helps out a bit. We just want to tighten it on enough to really attach one another to each other. We don't want to have it tight. Still pretty loose. Then we're going to come underneath, tighten up that hand knob just a little bit so we have just a little resistance. Come back up here, tighten this up a little bit more. Because what we're really just looking for is, like I said, a little resistance just in case we need to adjust this any. And then I just repeated that same process for the second two brackets. And if you look at how I have them located, I'm basically just trying to get them as evenly distributed as I could. Now from this point, I'm just going to grab this bracket. It's going to come with your kit. We want to make sure it's facing up like this, not downwards like this. So make sure it's facing up, and then it's just going to slide into that track using the back half of it. And you're just going to put it in that opening nearest to your bulkhead and just move it over roughly a few inches. We can adjust it later on. And now we can grab our tonneau cover. This might be a bit easier if you got two people with you going on either side of your truck, but you can definitely still do it yourself too, just by grabbing in the center. Now when you put this on, you want to make sure that the front side has that weather strip on the bottom nearest to your bulkhead. Another way to check too is you'll notice we have those buckles up top. We want that closest to our bulkhead. When you do this, you just want to try to make sure it's centered as possible. I'm just going to lower this down now and let it rest. And if I need to make any adjustments, I can just go back through and pull on it a bit. Once you have this roughly where you want it to sit, then we can actually test if this is going to be a good fit. So we're just going to come to the back side, unbuckle it on both ends. Once that's free, then we can unfold this. Now, right now, we do have this on here at the moment still. And something else I notice is when I'm doing this, I'm usually trying to listen for any clicks. I didn't hear no clicks. And that's because this isn't even on both sides. So I'm just going to shift this over a bit. Now, we went back through and adjusted everything. And the main thing we did was tighten those clamps all the way down. And that kind of helps this not shift as much when we're closing it. So when I lower this down, you can hear that click now. And something else too to kind of let you know it's working is if you look at the location of the hooks, I can tell that they're even on both ends. So if they're in roughly the same placement, kind of oriented to your bed rails, then you know you're good. And then we'll close the last one. That's a good click. Make sure we can shut our tailgate too. And we can. Now, if you can't shut your tailgate, it's probably pulled too forward. So what you have to do is just push it back just a little bit, and then try again. Now we're going to secure this tonneau cover into this location. Now to do that, you're just going to come over here underneath the tonneau cover, and you're just going to pull out this T-bolt. And what we're trying to do with that T-bolt is get it into this bracket. Now, you're also going to need this spacer that's going to go underneath too. So that's going to go through that bolt. If I can get that into place. And what you're going to have to do is lift up on the tonneau cover itself. And honestly, this is probably going to be easier if you have the tonneau cover fully extended out, just so you can lift this back end a bit easier. Now I'm going to try to lift it up just from this side to show you what I mean. And now I'm going to lower it back down to that same location. Before you grab the other hardware, which is going to be this hand knob a wing nut, and a end cap. I recommend putting on the other side because once you have this cinched down, you won't be able to lift it up again. But basically when you do this, you're just going to put that hand knob on first. So this is on there pretty tight. Then you'll go in with the wing nut, put pressure against it. This one I find to be a little bit more tricky. The threads are a little bit harder to get on. But once you have that wing nut on there all the way, I'll just put it on there partially since I still need to put it on my other side. Then we're going to grab that end cap and put it at the very end of there. And something that we found too is that this weather strip on the back folded in on itself while we were trying to adjust them both. Now, if you are having that issue too, I'd recommend holding off before you put on the hand knobs to pull this out. Still having that spacer and that bolt through that bracket, because if you have to, once you have to lift this up, this is just automatically going to curl in on itself. So once you have this all the way out, then you could put on those hand knobs and tighten this down into place. Now we're going to go back to that second bracket that we actually installed on here. That one right there. And we're going to line this up with this bracket underneath the tonneau cover. Once we have it pretty much lined up, a good way to test it is just grab this hand knob and see if it's going to run up through there. And if it will, then we're going to grab our smallest Allen key. You'll find a set screw on the front of it that will tighten down to keep this in place so it's not shifting. Once you have that tightened down all the way, we'll grab that hand knob and run it up through there. We want to get this tightened down completely. You'll notice it's tightened down all the way once that bracket becomes flush with your tonneau cover. Now we're just going to give this one last test to make sure nothing's shifted and it's all working properly. So we're making sure it's latching. We're not having any issues moving it. And then we also want to make sure that we can shut a tailgate. And we're looking pretty good here. So that'll just do it for our look at the installation and some of the features of the etrailer quad fold-up tonneau cover on the back of our 2025 Ram 1500. I'm Matt. Thanks for watching.